This video is created for educational and informational purposes only. It discusses real-life events to raise awareness and understanding of true crime cases. There is no intent to glorify harm or spread misinformation. Viewer discretion is advised. On the night she was supposed to be celebrating the end of high school, a teenager vanished without a trace, no body, no justice, and a mystery that has haunted the world for nearly 2 decades. This is the story of Natalee Holloway, the girl who never came home. In May of 2005, Natalee Holloway was an 18-year-old high school senior from Alabama. She was bright, ambitious, and so excited about her future. She had just graduated and was getting ready to start pre-med studies in college. To celebrate this huge milestone, Natalee and her friends went on a senior trip to Aruba, a beautiful tropical island known for its white sand beaches, lively nightlife, and most importantly, its reputation for being incredibly safe. But what was meant to be a joyful, carefree trip would soon turn into one of the most disturbing and high-profile missing person cases in modern history. Natalee arrived in Aruba with over 100 of her classmates. For the first few days, everything seemed completely normal. They were doing what you'd expect, soaking up the sun, sightseeing, and enjoying the island's parties and late nights. On May 30th, 2005, the group spent their final evening celebrating at some of the local clubs. That night, Natalee was last seen leaving a popular nightclub called Carlos and Charlie's at around 1:30 in the morning, and she didn't leave by herself. Several witnesses reported seeing her get into a car with 3 young men, Joran van der Sloot, his brother Paulus van der Sloot, and their friend Deepak Kalpo. That car ride would become the last confirmed sighting of Natalee Holloway. The next morning, when it was time to head to the airport for their flight home, Natalee never showed up. At first, her friends just assumed she'd overslept after a long night out. But as the hours started to tick by, a feeling of unease turned into full-blown panic. Her luggage was still sitting in her hotel room, her passport was untouched, and every call to her phone went straight to voicemail. By the end of that day, Natalee Holloway was officially reported missing. What followed was an international search that would capture the entire world's attention. Aruban authorities quickly focused their investigation on the 3 men who were last seen with Natalee. Joran van der Sloot immediately became the primary person of interest. From the very beginning, his story was a tangled mess of contradictions. At first, he claimed they dropped Natalee off at her hotel, safe and sound. Then, he changed his story and said they left her on a beach. Later on, he changed it again, spinning a completely different version of events. Each story he told contradicted the last one. But despite these massive inconsistencies and the cloud of suspicion hanging over him, there was no physical evidence that directly linked him to a crime. The search for Natalee was massive. Teams of searchers combed every inch of the island. Hundreds of volunteers, including many from her home state of Alabama, flew in to help. They searched beaches, dense forests, and the surrounding ocean. They brought in cadaver dogs and had dive teams explore underwater areas. But no matter where they looked, there was no sign of Natalee. It was like she had vanished into thin air. The case absolutely exploded in the media. Natalee's mother, Beth Holloway, became the public face of the search. Day after day, she appeared on television, pleading for answers and for her daughter's safe return. News outlets from the United States and all around the globe covered every single development. This intense media spotlight put immense pressure on Aruban authorities, who faced heavy criticism and accusations of mishandling the investigation from the very start. Yet, despite the global attention, the weeks turned into months, and the months turned into years. And still, there was no trace of Natalee Holloway. As time went on, Joran van der Sloot continued to draw attention, and not in a good way. He seemed to almost enjoy the notoriety, participating in TV interviews, documentaries, and even some bizarre, hidden camera sting operations. He would tease that he knew what happened, only to deny it later. In 2010, he even tried to extort money from Natalee's family, claiming he would finally reveal the location of her remains in exchange for a large sum of money. That deal turned out to be a cruel lie, a heartless scam. Just days after receiving a partial payment, Joran fled to Peru. And there, exactly 5 years to the day after Natalee disappeared, he committed another horrific, violent crime, for which he was arrested, convicted, and sentenced to prison. This act only deepened the public's belief that he knew far more about Natalee's disappearance than he ever admitted. In 2012, 7 long years after Natalee vanished, a judge in her home state of Alabama officially declared her legally deceased. It was a legal step to provide some sort of finality, but it wasn't true closure. No remains were ever recovered, no charges were ever filed directly related to her disappearance. And no one was ever truly held accountable for what happened to her in Aruba. For her family, the pain of not knowing never really ended because justice was never served. So, why does this case still haunt so many people, nearly 2 decades later? I think it's because Natalee Holloway's story touches on a universal fear, the fear of how someone can just disappear from a place that's supposed to be safe. It's the terrifying idea that the answers might exist, that someone out there knows the truth, but that those answers may never come to light. It's the frustration of knowing that justice can remain just out of reach. This case also fundamentally changed how parents viewed things like graduation trips, travel safety for young people, and who you can trust when you're in a foreign country. All these years later, people still ask the same question: what really happened that night in Aruba? Natalee was so much more than a headline or a true crime story. She was a daughter. She was a friend. She was a vibrant young woman with her entire life ahead of her. Her story is a heartbreaking reminder that some mysteries don't fade away with time. Instead, they just grow louder. And somewhere out there, someone knows the truth. Until that truth finally comes to light, Natalee Holloway will always be remembered as the girl who never came home. Thanks for watching.